Hello and welcome to the Magical Midlife Podcast, where you get a refreshing, uplifting and optimistic perspective on life in your 40s and 50s. I'm your host, Lindsay DeSwart, and I'm delighted that you've joined us here today, so let's jump right in. So hello and welcome to Magical Midlife Podcast. I'm your host, Lindsay DeSwart, and today I am delighted to be able to introduce my guest, Jilan Koch, who is a good friend and happens also to be a mum and a naturopathic doctor, and has actually helped me and one of my sons out with our health and getting a really holistic view of moving forward with our health. So I am delighted to be able to invite Jilan to share her story and her knowledge today. And so let me hand it over to you, Jilan. Welcome today.
Thank you so much for having me. This is very exciting.
Oh, you're so welcome. That's really cool. So what I'd love to do, first of all, is just to get a really good foundation of kind of, who you are, what it is you do, whether you've got kids, a dog, I don't know, a pet lizard, whatever it is, do share with us so we feel like we're getting to know you.
Sounds great. So I'm a naturopathic doctor. I practice here in Ontario. I have two beautiful kids who are growing up very quickly on me. I think you somehow knew ahead of time all the pets are the desired pets because we do have a lizard.
You are kidding me. I didn't know that. That was just a joke.
It's my son's lizard, but I think it should be mine because I'm the one that ends up feeding it every night. But I am currently searching and researching because my goal is to buy a dog so that I can train it as a therapy dog because I think there's going to be needing lots of healing. And if this little dog can do that, I'm just excited for the opportunity to be able to train a puppy to heal the world.
That is very cool. That's quite a big weight, though, on puppy's shoulders.
Yes.
And this puppy fluffy shoulders.
This puppy has lots of weight on it, actually. Everybody keeps laughing and thinking I'm very hopeful with the achievements I'm going to get from this puppy because I keep talking about how it's going to be my pet to replace the kids when they go off and how it's going to calm my son down and it's going to be my husband's this. And it's going to be over at the library. And yeah, I've got big ambitions for this little puppy, but I'm hoping it'll be a girl and that I'll be able to name her Abby, short for abundance.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, or Percy for perseverance. We're toying with names here.
Oh my goodness. And I have fought so hard with my family over the years to have any pet at all called Keith, just because it makes me laugh.
Well, maybe we look at getting you a lizard because, Keith sounds like a good lizard name.
Except for a lizard. I can't have a lizard. Anyway, back to more important things. I am intrigued about your path because I know that you've moved locations with your family in the past. So first of all, were you raised on this side of Canada or over on the west side of Canada?
Yeah, so I was raised in Richmond Hill, so over on this side of Canada. And after school was done, so we're talking 9 years of post-secondary, I just felt like I had to get away. I never did the traveling to Europe or the backpacking. So it was just this, I guess, rebel in me that just thought, I have to do something different. I have to get out. I have to go. So my husband and I picked up before we were even married, and we drove a little cube van across Canada and set up shop there. That's where I started my first practice. It's where, we flew back to get married, but we bought our first home, had both of our kids there. And then we started to realize that if ever we want a vacation to the Caribbean instead of back to Ontario to visit family, we needed to move back to Ontario. So we did. People sometimes ask if I regret the move, if I regret having even gone out there in the first place. And absolutely not. It was such a magical life. I loved living out west. The culture and philosophy are just so different. So I'm just grateful I had that opportunity. I'm also grateful to be back and closer to family so I can help them out and they can help me out. And and just really be part of this part of the community as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So did you do your naturopathic training straight from after post-secondary?
Yeah, so I did a minor in nutrition and nutraceutical sciences and a major in nutrition and nutraceutical sciences, a minor in French. So I took 5 years in my undergrad. And then I went right into naturopathic college, which was another 4 years.
Oh my goodness.
So it was a
Okay.
lot. I'm a perpetual student. I could still sit and study all day, every day.
Seriously. So what's the next thing on the horizon for your studies?
Nothing, because I'm still paying off the past studies. Everybody's cut me off from education. I'll just do continuing education instead now.
Okay, fair enough. YouTube has some really good videos. You might
and they're free.
There you go. Puppy training with YouTube.
Exactly.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, be careful. That'll be like a bottomless pit of training for you. Excellent. Okay, so you are, I have to say, one of the few people I know that actually started off knowing where you were going, what you were doing, the training that you were doing, and you're still doing that today. And yeah, I mean, so what is it about being a naturopathic doctor that keeps you so engaged?
Well, it's interesting because I've always known I wanted to go into medicine. I've always had a passion, always wanted to help people. And we can say that I've known what I was doing and I knew my path, but I will say I flipped-flopped so many times in my practice because everybody says you have to have a niche. But truthfully, I think your niche is very hard to commit to long-term because you attract the people that are resonating most with you at that time. So when my mother-in-law was sick with cancer, I was treating many, many cancer patients. I got pregnant, I suppose people saw that it was this healthy pregnant woman who practiced right up until my due date and was back in the office a month after. And so I attracted women who wanted to conceive. And then it was pediatrics because, I had all this experience trying all these different supplements on my own kids. So now I was a pro and able to practice on other people's kids. No, I think it's just really, you switch things up. I am starting to move towards helping women in their 30s and 40s and 50s because I think menopause is well catered to. And I think that women in their childbearing years are well catered to, but no one really talks about women in their late 30s and early 40s, late 40s. And it's just this whole generational gap that just gets missed. And there's so much that's going on in this time of life as well.
Okay, so that's really interesting. Would you be happy to share just, what do you mean by that? Because it's kind of a gap that I'd never really have thought needed that much attention.
Well, this is kind of like, I will say even personally, from my 40th birthday, I started noticing changes in my body.
Right.
I certainly can't go a night with crappy sleep anymore. When my kids interrupt my sleep, I don't function as well during the day. Your hormones do start to change. No, it may not be hot flashes, but there are slight little changes that you might notice either in your cycle as a woman, in the way that you sleep, in how you manage stress. So there's all these little changes because your estrogen and progesterone production are slowly starting to decrease. And so that's the hormonal piece. But then we have to stop and think there are other stresses for people who have had kids and who have devoted their entire lives to their kids. Now their kids are starting to grow up and don't need them as much. I've recently found myself in a place where I'm trying to reconnect with who I was before having kids. It's actually been kind of a neat process for me because I was a student before having kids. I remember once I graduated, because my husband's a flight attendant and would often be gone, I tried buying beads and making jewelry and realized I don't actually like making jewelry. I'm not a musical person. I tried knitting and sewing. None of that really jives with me. So over the years, I've had to start to figure out, like, who am I when I'm not studying and when I'm not a mom and when I'm not a wife and when I'm not a naturopathic doctor? And I've come to realize that I will be a puppy trainer. But I love making food. I love growing food. So I love working in my garden in the backyard. Yeah, so I'm slowly rediscovering who I am when I'm not all of those other titles.
Yeah. It's funny actually, because the last lady I interviewed, it was Mickey, who I think you know.
Yes.
And Mickey said the same thing. She said, let me introduce myself before I get into the labels and the titles, because we become all of those things. And then somewhere we're like, but who's at the base of all of that?
Exactly.
And what is it that I love? What is it that I want to do? What is it that I did when I didn't have all the responsibilities? And very often, as I said, I think I've said in another podcast, it's interesting. It's about the age of 11, apparently. What you're doing at around the age of 11 is something that invariably you come back to.
That's interesting because
I
I
know.
don't even remember being 11.
Okay, you have to go back over some childhood albums or something and see what you were doing.
Apparently.
Yeah, indeed. Let's get back to when you made the move to Calgary. You said you just knew you needed to get away and, go and see some stuff. So what was it within you that made you make that move? Because it's a pretty brave move.
Well, my husband and I had decided that we would take a trip during my last year of school. And we went to Ottawa, we went to Vancouver, we went to Calgary, because we thought, let's just check it out and see, maybe. And I tell you, when I landed in Calgary, I just fell in love. The sky is so blue there. The sunny days are they're so numerous. It's a dry cold. Everybody thought I was going to be miserable when I moved because I hate the cold.
Because it's long winters too, isn't it?
But the thing about Calgary is that you get Chinooks. So you don't actually put away all your clothes. My first Christmas there, I was walking along the Bow River in shorts and a t-shirt.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so for anybody who doesn't know, what's a Chinook?
A Chinook is just, I don't even know like the geographical, or not geographical, but the environmental changes. I think it's just that the pressure's coming in over the mountains and it brings in warm weather. So yeah, it was just so magical. And I remember I looked at my husband and said, I don't know if you're coming with me. We weren't married yet. We just knew we would be. And I said, I don't know if you're coming with me, but I'm moving here. And as we continued on our trip and we went to Lake Louise and we went to Banff, and he proposed to me while we were in Banff, in Lake Louise. So yeah, I guess that just meant that he was all in and ready to move to Calgary with me too, thankfully. And yeah, so we were able to set up shop there, and we lived in an apartment and eventually moved into a home.
And what was it about the lifestyle that you loved?
Everybody prioritized health. There was a way better work-life balance. At lunchtime, people would be walking around. They were outside. I did a running group there, and there were 60 of us training for a half marathon. And granted, it was also the location. So people from other running rooms would come to ours because we would run around the reservoir and we'd be in the woods and in meadows. And, these were the type of runs where people would come out and say, there's a bear, go the other way.
Seriously, how fun.
Seriously. And you would see deer and you would see just all sorts of terrain and rivers, and just, you were really immersed in nature there. And I remember I ran before having my daughter, and then I started running again when she was, I think, 8 or 9 months old. I registered for a learn to run, because of course I was starting from scratch again in April, thinking, okay, it'll be warmer. I can get out there and do this with her. And don't you know, it's -40 and we have a snowstorm on the first day of the run.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me.
Bundling her up. I've got tears down my face. There's a point where I tell everybody to go because she's crying and I have to stop and nurse her. But I knew if I didn't keep going, I would never run again. So that's what I did. So there's that part of the lifestyle where it's just, everybody is healthy, everybody is outdoorsy, everybody is kind and slow and present. Yeah, it's just very different to the lifestyle here, very different from growing up in Richmond Hill. Yeah.
And so Richmond Hill, again, if somebody doesn't know, Richmond Hill is basically a suburb of Toronto.
Yeah, it's North Toronto. It's part
Yeah.
of York Region. Yeah, but it's very fast paced. It's changed so much, even since I grew up there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't go back. This is why I keep moving further and further north.
Fair enough. Okay, so my husband and I's conversations about moving to Calgary, all of a sudden I'm like, I haven't really got too many objections left, have I?
Oh, it's so lovely there.
Yeah.
Now, I will say, I don't know what it's like now because when we left, it was the recession, and I know things have been tough for them there since, but it is just so beautiful.
Because that was going to be my next question. Would you go back?
If I didn't worry about aging parents, and I didn't have to worry about starting another practice because I've done that so many times and I don't want to do that again, I would absolutely go back.
Mm-hmm.
Even the medical care there was different.
Really?
Yeah.
So did it support a more natural way of being, a more natural way of living?
I think it was more accepting of it.
Okay.
So I think it was different because there you didn't see a pediatrician unless there was something wrong with your child. So not everything was medicalized. There you didn't need to go to an obstetrician or an OB-GYN to have your baby. There was family practices that were all female doctors and they just focused on that. If you wanted to do a midwife, it wasn't covered at the time. So that's why I didn't do one, but I was fully equipped. I had homeopathics and my best friend in there with me. And I had my labor plan templates, and all the doctors were just so cool and understanding and open. Nobody ever made fun of me for being overly natural or wanting things to go a certain way. So it was just very welcoming and embracing of different philosophies.
Mm-hmm. So you saying about the being overly natural, let's talk about that. And the reason I say it is because I came to more of a natural way of being later in life. And although I always thought I was favored a natural way of being and never taking, a lot of painkillers or anything like that, never taking medications unless it was absolutely necessary. I think it was only after the birth of my second child that I was introduced to this whole different way of being. Obviously, you studied so much in order to be a naturopathic doctor. So how come you chose that route? Because it sounds as if the natural health was always more of your thing.
So it wasn't. I had never actually heard about naturopathic medicine until my last year of school. I had never seen a naturopathic doctor personally.
Tell us more.
I just got so frustrated with the conventional medical model. My mother-in-law, when she was diagnosed with breast cancer, she had gone in months before saying, I've got arm pain. And in a woman, so ladies, if you're listening and you have arm pain on one side, get them to work you up for breast cancer, because that is a really pathognomonic symptom of breast cancer, because those lymph nodes get blocked up. And she had gone to her doctor and her doctor said, I'm not a bone doctor. I don't know why your arm is sore. And that was it. And she left it. Breast cancer is very treatable. So I think had they flagged her on that earlier, she'd still be with us today. And then I also think back to my dad so he's diabetic and he had cardiovascular disease. And I always found his care very frustrating. I don't fault his doctors. They were lovely, but it's the way we teach our doctors. So my dad would come home and I'd say, well, let me help you. We can make some healthy food. And, you like cookies, I can make them so that they're sugar-free and they won't affect your blood sugar. And we can change your diet so cholesterol doesn't have to be an issue. And he would just look at me and say, my doctors say if I take my medicine, I can eat whatever I want. So why would I do all of this work? Well,
interesting.
Lo and behold, in my exam week of, I think it was my 4th year or 5th year, I get a call that my dad's had a heart attack. And I will tell you, I was not sad. Maybe should have been. That would have been the normal reaction. But I was actually angry because I always knew that it wasn't a matter of if, it was a matter of when.
Yeah.
So, because to me, this was all preventable. I remember them putting him in the hospital for something and they were feeding him ice cream and Jell-O. And I'm thinking, the guy is diabetic. I don't even need a naturopathic degree or a nutrition degree to know that there's all kinds of things that are wrong with this picture.
Yeah.
Yeah, so then I was able to start to take a look back at things and say, no longer want to be a conventional medical doctor. It doesn't resonate with me.
Mm-hmm. Sorry.
Yeah, I just want to prevent people from having to get to the point where they're now going into the hospital or getting to the point where we're working on their end of life care because we didn't prevent things earlier.
Yeah, fair enough. So how do you think you're raising your kids differently because of the knowledge that you have?
Well, one thing that I will say that my kids have as an advantage compared to the general population, even my patients, is that this is all they know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very good.
Right? And I've taught them in such a way that I don't think that they feel deprived. So my kids have never had a can of pop. They've
Mm-hmm.
never been to McDonald's. And it's not to say that there's anything horrifically wrong if your kids have. It's just that because these were our core values growing up, that what we put in our body and how we take care of our body, I implanted that seed from the very beginning. This is all they know.
Yeah.
And so, we've been at birthday parties and they said, oh, they get that pop or that juice. And I say, okay, like if you really need a juice, we'll grab an organic juice on the way home.
Mm-hmm.
I don't ever stock the juice. I don't ever bring pop home. If there is something like other kids get loads of gummies, I'll say we can go get gummies. They just don't have to have artificial colors and flavors in them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not that they've been deprived. It's just, this is my opportunity to
Mm-hmm.
give these two little beings the best start at life. And I started that even before I got pregnant. I made sure that my body was healthy and that I could conceive them. And even
Mm-hmm.
now, I make sure my body is healthy because I have huge dreams about what I'm going to do with them, even as they get older and they don't want to hang with me. They don't know it. I'm going to still be around.
Very cool. So do you feel like, actually, do you know what? I was going to ask, do you feel like you've given up anything? But actually, I know from my own experience that going to a natural and healthy life, I certainly don't feel like I gave up anything.
No, and I think once you start to reap the benefits of it, you
Mm.
start to realize that the benefits that you gain are way greater than anything you give up.
Mm.
So I've been gluten-free for years. And
Oh,
when I
yeah.
eat gluten, I feel like garbage. So
Mm.
sure, I could walk into, any coffee shop and buy any tart or sweet or whatever, but it doesn't make me feel good. So if I'm going in to have something and making a conscious choice because I really want something lovely and delicious, well, I'll either bake something or go to a gluten-free bakery and
Mm.
have it. Am I giving anything up? Absolutely not. I still relish in these delicious foods. I just do it differently.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, my son's gluten-free, so the same thing. And he has been for, yeah, probably 4 or 5 years now. And the difference to him is unbelievable too.
Yeah.
So I totally get it. I mean, okay, so what are the most common things that you see from women coming in of our age that you think are such easy things to change, to get rid of or to calm down? What would you advise women of our age to be doing?
Yes.
I'm 50, so
It's
coming
all
in.
the same though, this whole phase. So there's really 5 things that I get women to start focusing on.
Okay.
I really encourage them to start to manage their stress. I want to actually preface everything that I'm about to say, but it's the little changes that we make. It's just making small changes in a really consistent fashion.
Mm-hmm.
So, if managing your stress means you're getting out for a walk, that's fabulous. If you don't have time for a 1 hour walk, journal or deep breathe for 5 minutes, or stand up and dance to your favorite song. Like, what's the average song? Like 3.5 minutes or
Mm.
something. If you can just do deep breathing or meditation or yoga, I mean, there's so many opportunities to
Yeah.
figure out what it is that works for you. You don't have to subscribe to them all. Nobody
Mm-hmm.
has time to do all of these things every single day. So just start somewhere, find one thing that works, one thing that you enjoy, and then make that a consistent habit in your daily life.
Okay.
Another thing that I would say is sleep. If your sleep is not in check, you have to get it in check, because when we're not sleeping, we are grumpy the next day, or at least I am. But I think the other thing is that we don't realize that night after night of poor sleep actually affects our cortisol levels. And when our cortisol levels are affected, it further affects our sleep. It also affects our sex hormone levels. How many times do women come in and they're like, I don't know that it's my libido that's gone, but it's my desire, but I want to, but I'm just so tired at the end of the day. And I'm thinking there's nothing wrong with your body. There's nothing wrong with your mind. There's nothing wrong with your relationship. Of course you want to be intimate with your partner, but that's exactly it. You're tired. So let's find ways to nourish the body. Let's find ways to get great quality sleep so that when you're ready, when you have that opportunity, that you can actually seize it. So sleep is so important. Sex, and when I say sex, I'm referring to the sex hormones, right? Because it is possible that now, as women are approaching their period, their estrogen is dropping off, and their estrogen's a little lower than it normally was before. And so they might be experiencing hot flashes. And for some women, that's terrible. It's waking them from their sleep. And then we're going back to that disorderly sleep and horrible reactions during the day and poor relationships. So everything is just so tightly connected. And, going back to the stress piece, when we're stressed, we have a really tough time managing our cortisol levels. So then we are more prone to blood sugar imbalances. Our weight is more susceptible to the amount of carbohydrates we consume in a day. We're just a little bit less tolerant. And so then I'm often telling women we have to balance out how you bring in carbohydrates into your meal and into your body, and how you're balancing it with fats and how you're balancing it with protein, so it doesn't have quite the negative impact that it used to, or that it's having right now. Because in the past, we could all eat loads of bread and crackers and whatnot and pasta, and it had no impact. Whereas now for some women, it is having an impact, and it's impacting them in such a way that they're worried about their body image and they're wanting to thin out. But no matter what they do, no matter how many calories they cut and how much exercise they do, they're not seeing any changes. And that's because weight loss and healthy body composition is way more than calorie in, calorie out. It's about all of these hormones. And it's also about if you're eliminating. So that would be the fifth piece, is if you're not eliminating properly, these toxins reabsorb into your body and they cause cellular damage, and they allow estrogen to accumulate, and they allow cholesterol to accumulate in your body. So really we're looking at stress, sleep, sex, those sex hormones, sugar intake, and your bowels. So those are the really big things, and those are important at any time of year, but I would say even more now.
Okay. I love the opportunity that we have right now, because that everything that you've just shared is so crucial and so important, and also goes hand in hand with when you talk about the reducing stress and the cortisol and, potential hot flashes, anything like that. That goes hand in hand with the work that I do with people, which is actually about finding ways to speak your voice, to express your emotions, to clear out old past wounds and past trauma, because all of that actually is holding energy in the body, and it's causing stress. It's causing lack of sleep. It is absolutely causing hot flashes, because the energy of anger and frustration, it's a hot energy. And if you've got no way to get that out and express that, guess what? It's bubbling away inside of your body. To me, what's so fabulous about us having this conversation now is that, yes, you can come at it from both angles, and neither is the complete answer on its own, because they work hand in hand. In order to reduce your stress, you've got to deal with some of the old wounds.
Absolutely. And something that you just actually said that made me think about is, even if someone's constipated, I often ask if they're feeling stuck in their life.
Yeah, really? What are they holding on to?
Right? Because That's exactly your bowels, your body. It mimics what's going on emotionally. Someone
Yeah.
who's got loose stool is usually rushing around, anxious, and feeling like life is passing them by so quickly. And their bowels are mimicking exactly that.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
absolutely. Oh, so that's cool. And it's so nice not to have to, as I say, not to have to compete for information, as in, no, this way is better than that. We're all a whole entity, we're a whole ecosystem, and we need to look after every section of that. I mean, I remember you saying to me years ago, okay, so rather than having the whole bagel for lunch, just try a half bagel. And now I'm like, oh, I can't eat a full bagel. Oh my goodness, no. You know, too many wasted carbohydrates. So do bear in mind that your simple steps that you tell people to take are the easiest ones to change and the
Yeah.
easiest ones to maintain. Okay, so I want to find out more about you.
Okay.
Okay, and I really appreciate you sharing your professional advice. And at the end, I'll also ask you to share your website and stuff so anybody can come and contact you for that. Okay, so what have been the most tough challenges for you to face?
I will say moving back. So I think the hardest part is every time you have to leave a clinic, because I've left a couple of clinics.
Mm-hmm.
You love your patients, you love the people that you work with, but you realize that each clinic, each place is like a season. So sometimes you're doing it for personal reasons, and sometimes you're doing it for professional reasons. But each time you do it, it's like being in a divorce.
It's tough.
It is. I've been blessed because, many of my patients from Calgary still reach out to me. I don't treat them because I'm not allowed to treat outside of Canada or outside of Ontario. But it's so nice when they're still commenting and updating me on how they are, because, some of these families, they couldn't get pregnant and now their kids are celebrating their 14th birthday.
Wow,
I'm
cool.
blessed to be invited into their lives and that they're still sharing this with me.
Mm-hmm.
So when you do leave, it's like a divorce. There's lots of stress. You need that closure and it's exhausting.
Yeah.
My move from Calgary was probably, I would say that it was my traumatic experience. It wore me out because we were moving back. Now it wasn't a cube van. We had to ship a car, ship furniture. We had 2 kids. It's amazing how much stuff they accumulate.
Mm-hmm.
So then we were moving back, staying at my mom's for a bit because our house we didn't have the keys yet. But amidst all this, I was trying to set up a practice here and a couple at that time. And because the new naturopath who was going to take over for me in Calgary hadn't started yet, I flew back every 2 weeks with my little one because I was still nursing him to be able to see patients there. So every 2
Goodness, the
weeks,
commitment.
yeah, I had to, organize a car, organize a place to stay, organize childcare, make sure that, everything was still set up in terms of my practice there. I'd fly back and forth. And I did that 3 or 4 times. And then coming back every time, it was like, okay, now I'm starting from scratch here.
Oh
I
my goodness.
didn't feel settled. It actually took me 8 years probably to feel settled in Newmarket.
Wow.
And that was because I was practicing in Kleinburg and in Orangeville. And there was a point that I was practicing at 3 clinics in Newmarket, Orangeville, and Kleinburg. And I got to the point where I was doing more patient management than the type of patient care. My energy was going into the wrong things. And that's when I said, this isn't how I wanted to practice. And
Mm-hmm.
we need to do things in a way that just inspires us and that is in line with how we want to care for people. When you're doing something like this, you can't do it in a way where you're not present or where you're exhausted and you can't give. So again, saying bye to each of those clinics and finally having the courage to just open up at home, thinking, oh, what will people think if I'm practicing from home? But in all reality, I found that people walk in and they feel just comfortable and safe and literally at home, where now we've got this safe, quiet, trusting environment.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really proud of myself for doing this, not only because I ventured out and had to do a whole bunch of new things on my own, but because I was able to create relationships with patients that I hadn't been able to do in the past.
So what was the catalyst of you realizing that actually you couldn't be spreading your time in, as you say, caring for people, but in the wrong way, i.e. patient management rather than patient care?
I think it was just the fact that when I moved back from Calgary, I knew I had a bit of adrenal fatigue. But see, this is the thing, is that I could keep taking all these supplements for adrenal health and I could keep running around, but the vitamins don't do anything if you don't change the underlying problem. And that is exactly what naturopathic medicine is about. Right. So there are no vitamins that will correct a toxic relationship or an unhealthy relationship. There are no vitamins. There's no amount of meditating that you can do if you're working in a hostile work environment or in a work environment where you're exposed to chemicals and you're dealing with health issues as a result of it. So sometimes we have to take a step back and we have to say, if I ever want to have abundant energy again, abundant inspiration, abundant motivation, abundant drive, I have to stop being so exhausted.
I think it's such a valid point. Running from thing to thing to thing and actually not looking at why am I doing that? And what are those things that I'm putting all my energy into?
And I'm teaching my patients to do work-life balance. And then I'm being the biggest hypocrite because I'm not doing that. And they appreciate it because I'm available to them. But how long, right? When we talk about those little changes you can do long-term because they're sustainable. But when you're doing these big, I'm going to say they're like assaults to your body on a daily basis, and you think you're going to do that for the next 40 years.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's just a little delusional at this point because that's just not sustainable.
Absolutely. So just you saying that kind of made me think about people who used to commute, and they would have this long daily commute and the stress and the pollution and the crowds and whatever else, depending on, where you're living and where you're commuting. How do you think, or what evidence have you seen within your clients to show that no longer having that commute is actually beneficial? And has it been beneficial?
That's a good question. So a lot of I've got about half and half, people still going to work and people working from home.
Okay.
I think it's a really tricky question to ask because I think there's the emotional roller coaster. Because right now, we're not just working from home. We're not just eliminating the commute. We're juggling our work from home with emotional issues, new stressors, kids being at home. So I think many people really love not having their commute. I think many people are able to sleep in a little bit and get sleep that they actually need. I'm not saying they're sleeping till 10 o'clock. I'm saying they're sleeping till 6 or 7. And they're eating breakfast and they have time to go to the washroom before they're rushing out to sit in traffic. So from that aspect, I think people are really reaping those benefits. Some teachers find that online learning or online teaching is very hard. And some of them would rather be in the classroom where they can see the kids and see the quality of the work and they can see which kids need help. Whereas across the screen, it's limited. So for them, sometimes it's more stressful and I've seen many people go through, oh, I love working from home. Oh my gosh, I would do anything to be back in my office. I miss my coworkers. Oh, I love working from home. So it's this big emotional roller coaster because yes, we've given up the commute, but we've given up.
I was going to say so much other things.
Social connections and that coffee or tea with a colleague at lunch or, for me, the first and second lockdown, they were tough. My son does not like sitting behind a computer all by himself. And even now I get text messages, Mommy, can you come sit with me for a minute? So that's tricky when you're trying to juggle their needs with your own and your patients. So yeah, absolutely. I wish I could give you a clear-cut answer on that one.
That's the thing though, right now, I don't think there are any clear-cut answers. Because as you say, it's true, everybody's handling it very differently. And so just like, you had a lot more on your plate when you did it. And to a degree, I suppose I did. I know a lot of entrepreneurs, when they give up the day job and then start doing their own thing, that loses the social connections, but you also lose the commute. So it's almost like going through a lot of things that everybody's had to go through COVID. You go through it, but you haven't had to give up all of the other stuff, like, kids' activities or a gym membership or, seeing buddies, seeing friends. This has been so much tougher for people because, as you say, everything's been wiped out.
Right. And when my commute was different because driving to Orangeville is literally one road and it's beautiful. And there are trees and grass. It's not like commuting downtown or being on the 404 or the 400. I
or
actually
commuting to Calgary.
Yes, that was different. That I would not recommend. I don't know how people do it. I don't know how my husband does it as a flight attendant. But when you see these business people getting on planes every week, going to Dubai or going to Japan, I don't know how. I have so much respect. Not even a cell in my body wants to do that because the back and forth to Calgary was no, that's not the life that I want to live.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the commute, though, I will say the commute to Orangeville was always lovely, except for the snowstorms. But it was when I got to just sit in silence or listen to music and just kind of shout at the top of my lungs with no one hearing me because my voice is horrible. It was also my opportunity to listen to podcasts and just learn.
Yeah.
So commutes aren't all bad, but again, I wasn't doing a 2-hour commute and I wasn't doing it towards a busy place.
Yeah. I mean, one of the reasons that we came to Canada actually was because my husband ended up doing a 4-hour commute per day.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And we just said, this is ridiculous. He was exhausted at the weekends. He would leave the house certainly before the kids were up, and he would get back after they'd gone to bed. Like, well, where's the quality of life? So as the mum trying to manage that and, build a business and whatever else, I mean, it was just stress extraordinaire. It was a ridiculous lifestyle.
Yeah. And there's so many people that do that. I agree with you. The quality of life is gone. And the unfortunate thing is that when you're doing that, you're coming home and there's no energy left to give to your partner and to your kids. And on the weekend, I still see many people, who are just disengaged, and it's because it's not like they're out physically doing something demanding, but they're just mentally drained. And so they turn off and they're on the couch watching TV hour after hour and still just disengaged from their family and from doing things that could be filling them.
Yeah, fair enough. So when you see things like that happening with your patients, what are the key strategies that you give them to try and re-engage? I mean, obviously you've said about, reducing stress, getting more sleep, looking after the sex hormones. Luckily,
I don't see that in my practice. The last one was making sure they're going to the bathroom.
Thank you.
Yeah. I don't see it. Here's the other tricky thing. I think once you get to the point that you're going to see a naturopathic doctor, it's because you've already made that choice to create change in your life. So it may not be my patients, it might be their partners. And so with them, I'm just supporting them because ultimately, when we say I do to our partners, we're saying that we'll stand by them in sickness and health, but we're not saying we'll spoon feed them and we'll put the vitamins in their mouth and we'll pick them up off the couch and get them to go for a run or make them meditate. That is not our job as partners. Our job is to inspire, plant the seeds, set the example, make things available, but it is not our job to parent our partners.
No, very true.
So, and that's hard because we all want our partners to live into their old age and just be vibrant and alive, but that's not our choice. It's their choice.
Yeah.
And it's a tricky thing to be able to compromise and juggle when we have expectations of people.
Yeah.
So having said that, my patients aren't the ones that are doing this because my patients have already made a choice to get up off the couch and come to me. Mm-hmm. It's akin to, personally, I think everybody should see a therapist. But it's the difference between knowing that you're emotionally going down and seeing that slippery slope and it's slow and steady, but you're not in a good place. and doing something sooner versus waiting until you hit your crisis point.
Yeah.
Right.
Fair enough.
So
what do you do for self-care?
What do I do for self-care? I go for a walk every
I put
single
you on the
morning.
Spot
now. No, this is good. I go for a walk every morning at 6:30 with my friend, and we go through the woods. You
forest bathe?
Yes, and I go. Well, I would love to say that my canoe trips are self-care, but they don't happen enough to qualify as self-care. My dog will be self-care. What do I do? I make yummy food for myself.
Mm-hmm.
I don't force myself to make yummy food when I don't feel like it, because then it feels like an effort and a task rather than something that I'm doing. I am the type of person that buys flowers not to have on the counter, but because I like to cut it and make my food beautiful and eat edible flowers.
Mm-hmm.
What else do? I deep breathe, I meditate, I journal, I pray, and I don't do all of those things on one day. This morning I did my walk and I didn't journal and I didn't pray, but I did do deep breathing with my little heart rate variability monitor. I took my vitamins, I ate beautiful meals. So it's, for me, they're little things that I just inject into my day here and there. Do I get my hair done? Evidently not. I don't get my nails done. So that's not the way I do self-care, but I do it in my own little, like I said, little injections in my day.
Mm-hmm. But isn't that the beauty of where you are now? You actually get to make the choice.
That's it. And we know now that it's not about checking something off to say, yes, it was one more thing that I did perfectly.
Yes.
We know that we can take deep breaths for 1 minute, and that counts as self-care.
Yeah, absolutely. And also the things like getting your nails done might work for some people, but it's not important to you.
Absolutely. And I will say, I do like getting my nails done, but it's not something that I need to fill me on a daily basis.
Yeah, fair enough. Very, very cool. Okay. So, because I'm conscious of time, so how can people find you? And I know that you have a blog. So even if people aren't in Ontario at the moment, they can still benefit from your knowledge.
Yeah. So I've got a website, and my blog is linked up to my website at Dr. Jilan, Jilan, Koch, KOCH.com. I am on Facebook at Dr. Jilan Koch, ND, and I'm on Instagram at Dr. Jilan Koch. So I don't check Twitter. I've got an account, but don't try and contact me through there. I don't remember the password or the login. So yeah, those are the two best places to reach me.
Okay, that's fantastic. Well, Jilan, thank you so much for your time today. I have learned plenty, which I really appreciate. Even though I've seen you in person as well, I've learned plenty today, which I'm very grateful for. Yeah, I love the fact that it's so down to earth, all the information, the advice, the self-care, and also to know that there are so many simple steps that you can take, so long as you keep taking them, that are going to make you just feel so much better, and just to get rid of this whole, menopause of doom kind of energy. So thank you so much for sharing that with us today.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. And I love that you're doing this, Lindsay. Keep it up, because you're right. There is this idea that we're going downhill at this point, but we're not. This is when our kids are growing up and we get to witness their successes, but we get to go back and achieve our own at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that is the perfect note to finish on. So thanks so much. And thank you very much for listening in. And please remember that if you like what you've heard today, please subscribe, please share this with your friends, please comment on Facebook. And I will see you in the next episode for another very inspiring and wonderful guest, just like Jilan today. Okay, thanks so much. Bye.